Go.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is New York Writers Workshop at Underland Gallery. Tim Tomlinson here, your host for the evening. We have a great program set up for you. This is our first reading of 2024, so we're really thrilled to be back in this wonderful space. We hope you can see it at some point. Maybe we'll spin the camera around and you can see first the enormous audience, the well-behaved audience. And I always want to point out that our hosts here at the Underland Gallery, Maxim and Hannah was around a little while ago, and Esther, they give us the space for free. And it's just such a wonderful space, really. And it's just a service to be like. We love these guys. They help us out. Obviously, we come in and we don't know even how to work our iPhones. We figure everything out. And now we're broadcasting live all the way to Australia. This is why we need the teleprompter. Okay. So we're doing last Saturdays this spring, and I'm calling this spring. I'm insisting that this is a spring reading. Hopefully that'll influence the weather. We'll do two more, one in March and one in April. And I'll tell you a little bit more about those as we go along. The big thing that New York Writers Workshop is cooking up is a conference and a literary festival in Kathmandu. So from May 22 to June 2, we'll be in Kathmandu. The price point is ridiculous. Many of the people signing up are telling us that it feels like we're paying them. It almost feels that way to us too. While the early bird special is still available, and that runs all the way till March 15. So if you're interested, ask me some questions at one of the breaks, or send us a note. We'll tell you all about it. And please pass those flyers around, the brochures around, to whomever. If you know somebody who might be interested, this is a great deal. And we're setting up a fantastic workshop over there with 4 days of panels, workshops, discussions, excursions into the cultural landscape, and then a 2-day festival in the center of Kathmandu, followed by 4 days out in the wilderness on the lakefront. So we'll actually be meeting holding men and seeing tigers and riding elephants and writing poems.
Wow. Riding elephants, writing poems.
So tonight we have 3 wonderful writers, Vina, Orden, Chenda, and Miho, Kinnas. And we're live streaming on Facebook. So please send us a note wherever you're checking in from and let us know where you're checking in from. We usually have people watching all the way in Australia, sometimes Singapore and the Philippines, and other locations in the country, including Hawaii. I think once we had Wisconsin. Please check out our website, New York Writers Workshop, weebly.com. Find the donate button, which is on the front page. Hit that generously and often. We're a not-for-profit organization, a 501c3, and we live on the support from people like you guys and people in the audience. I was going to ask everybody to like us on Facebook, but I was hacked on Facebook. So our New York Writers Workshop page was shut down. Don't like us on Facebook. Like us on Instagram, and we're going to get another page up very soon. I'll let you know when that happens. Okay. So the last time we did this reading in the fall, I began with a short poem. And I'm going to do that again tonight. Not one of my own. The world is such a messed up place right now, and any kind of connectivity, I think, is valuable. And this one is about connectivity. It's by the poet Chase Twitchell. Does anybody know her and know her work? She's, I think by now she's an ordained Buddhist monk. She's been writing poetry for decades. And this is called You, Reader, As I Imagine You. Why is it so awkward to acknowledge each other's presence here? Who says we can't meet in public, can't stop and sit together on a bench and watch the dogs go by? As a child, I looked for you in books and sometimes sensed you reading what I was reading. Even as a child, I knew you would someday come to this place and meet me. So that's by Chase Twitchell, and I did meet Chase Twitchell once in 1987 when I was somewhat a different person. She hated me. And, I'm so happy to look at her work now and see what I could have become had I been a little bit more mature. I met her in New Orleans. It's a funny story. Someday I might tell it. Doesn't reflect well on me. Okay. So now, let's get to the readers. Do I have the bios? You have the bios. Is there a bio right there, Dina?
We have
I'll just borrow this one. So up first we have Vina Orden. And I'm just going to read an abridged version of this, give everybody an idea. Vina Orden, freelance writer, editor, and human rights activist based in New York City, and the native name for New York City, right? Is that what that is? How do you say it?
Lenape.
Writes about Filipinx culture and community. Her work has appeared in Asian Journal, the Philam, Helipinai, and Hyperallergic, the Halo Halo Review, and The Margins. She's an editor at Slanted Magazine, where she supports emerging Asian American writers. You might have noticed this has an Asian American slant tonight. The magazine she edits for is Slanted. And she was an Open City Fellow in Community Journalism at the Asian American Writers Workshop. She curated the event Martial Law at 50, To Remember is to Resist. She has social media handles, which you can see there, and we're thrilled to have her here. I think things in the Philippines remain as crazy as things over here. So we need a witness. Come on up, Gina. Maybe I'll sit over here so I can. Okay, let me sit in this corner. Yeah, good.
Yes, this always has to happen with someone who's 5'2", right? Can you hear me? So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm primarily a prose writer, so I will begin with an excerpt from a personal essay, but in celebration of the poets who are here this evening and the poetry in this space, I will be reading a very short poem afterwards. So a bit of background, as Tim mentioned, I was an Open City Fellow in Community Journalism at the Asian American Writers Workshop. And I got to participate in a couple of projects reflecting on the 50th anniversary of martial law in the Philippines. So that was declared by Ferdinand Marcos Sr., and it lasted for 14 years until the fall of the dictatorship in 1986. And martial law was a period where tens of thousands of political opponents, journalists, writers, human rights workers, farmers, and indigenous people were arbitrarily arrested and jailed, and thousands tortured, disappeared, or killed. So this excerpt I'm about to read is from a project called Against Forgetting. It's a collection of prose and poetry by Filipino writers, including Luis Francia, who I know has read with you before, Ninoch Carrasca, Eric Gamalinda, Gina Apostol, and others. And I encourage you to check it out at aaww.org. So my essay, Children of the Sunflower Revolution, Creating a Life in the Shadow of the Martial Law Years, was a funny story. Incidentally, it was published the day that I was in front of the Asia Society protesting against the appearance of Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., who is the current president of the Philippines and the late dictator's son. As Tim said, it's just as messed up in the Philippines as it was, decades ago, but then also as it is here in this country as well. So let's get on with it. Ang liwanag ay kinakailangan ng mata upang mapagwari ang buong katunayan ng mga bagay-bagay. Ating hanapin ang liwanag. The eyes need light to behold the true nature of things. Let us seek the light. Emilio Jacinto, Liwanag at Dilim, 1896. One evening in October 2012, a cousin, who's here today, and I didn't know was coming, a cousin and I met up at Anthology Film Archives in the East Village. I know someone said he was from the East Village earlier, which was hosting a retrospective of work by filmmaker Kidlat Tahimik, a national artist of the Philippines from our ancestral hometown of Baguio City. We were there to see Bakit Dilaw ang Gitna ng Bahaghari? Why is yellow the middle of the rainbow? A documentary collage of personal and political events that the filmmaker and his late son, also named Kidlat, witnessed between 1984 and 1994, including the 1986 People Power Revolution in Baguio. My memories of childhood in Baguio are like Technicolor film stills, so surreal and fragmentary, I'm uncertain they ever happened. Watching Bakit Dilaw ang Gitna ng Bahaghari substantiated those sense memories. In one scene, the younger Kidlat is relegated indoors during a bagyo, or a typhoon. I instantly recalled what it was like to fear and to be awed by nature's power. The wind howling like a chorus of angry ghosts, mountain roads turning into rushing cascades that dragged away fallen limbs of pine, eucalyptus, and balete trees. The film also provided context for some of my earliest memories. To this day, I can picture this children's party I attended at 6 years old. There was a pine forest canopy, golden afternoon sunlight, a puppet theater, and children running around with eggs. My mind filed it away as an Easter egg hunt. And I experienced deja vu when at that very moment, that memory came to life on screen. But rather than an Easter egg hunt, the event was the November 1985 Sunflower People's Protest, a picnic honoring Ninoy Aquino, assassinated leader of the opposition against dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr., and his widow, Cory Aquino, who had decided to run for president against Marcos. Then, about an hour and 11 minutes into the documentary, I was jolted out of my seat, and I don't remember if you remember this. I do. The camera panned across a boisterous crowd in front of the Baguio Cathedral, also known as the Miracle Church, for sheltering thousands of refugees when the American Air Force carpet-bombed our city in World War II. For a brief second, decades younger versions of my mother, sister, cousin, and me flashed across the big screen. We were raising our thumbs and index fingers in an L shape to signify laban, or fight in Tagalog. And in my other hand, I was waving a yellow flag, the color of the opposition. The moving images resurrected long-buried memories, like the sound of tanks and trucks rumbling on gravel roads. I had never seen a military convoy in our town before. At one point, my mother asked me to approach a soldier standing before a tank and hand him a yellow ribbon. The fact that he was a defector and on our side escaped my understanding as a 7-year-old. It wasn't elation I felt, but confusion and terror instead. When I was old enough to grasp how tenuous the situation was, how protests around the country could have turned violent at the dictator's command, I'm sorry to say this, Mom, but I became very angry about my parents' decision to bring their children into it. It was only as an adult, when I joined protests against human rights abuses in the US and in the Philippines during the Trump and Duterte administrations, that I began to relate to my then 33-year-old parents. Nearly 4 decades after the 1986 People Power Revolution toppled the elder Marcos's dictatorship, his son Bongbong Marcos has ascended to the presidency. The new vice president, Sara Duterte Carpio, is the daughter of the recent president, Rodrigo Duterte, whose administration is under investigation by the International Criminal Court for extrajudicial killings and human rights abuses in its quote-unquote war on drugs. In all that time, there has been a systemic revision of the history of the Marcos dictatorship and the martial law era. The thing is, for as much as revisionists deny and try to expunge the truth, survivors embody and bear the scars of their cumulative trauma from a 2-decade authoritarian regime. My parents were high school freshmen when Marcos won his first term as president in 1965. He initially declined to send the Philippines to Vietnam during the war, but reversed course once he recognized the lucrative arrangement of collecting U.S. military aid, much of it discretionary and susceptible to graft, in exchange for fighting communists. The rising cost of living and unemployment for average Filipinos forced many, including my maternal grandfather, Lolo Pedon, to join tens of thousands of military personnel in Vietnam. For most of her high school and college years, my mother rarely saw her father, who was a payroll clerk for the U.S. Army in Vietnam from 1966 to 1972. She cherished the few Christmases he was able to take off to visit his family. When martial law was declared in September 1972, my mother's dorm at St. Luke's College of Nursing in Manila was raided and shut down for the rest of the semester. A few months later, my father was arrested and interrogated at the headquarters of the Philippine Constabulary, the infamous Krame on EDSA in Manila. It was then he realized that officials had kept dossiers on members of student organizations for at least 5 years before the declaration of martial law. Anyone who worked with the youth or poor was red tagged as a communist, my father explained. It's a phenomenon that persists today. Both my parents graduated later than planned in 1975. My father gave up law school because there was no law to talk about, and instead became a community organizer, then a sociology professor at the University of the Philippines in Baguio. My parents married in 1977, and I was born in 1979 at the tail end of the martial law years. When I think about who I am today, I realize how much I've been shaped by those years. If my father had been able to pursue the law and an economically viable career in the Philippines, or if Marcos actually stewarded the economy rather than outsourced job creation to wealthy countries keen on exploiting poor countries, would my mother have stayed instead of left us for 4 years for a nursing job at the height of the AIDS crisis here in New York? If my social and political consciousness had not been awakened at an early age, would I have been complacent in my Filipino-American middle-class narcissism and not joined the diasporic Malaya movement for democracy in the Philippines? There are times when I question whether I might be doing more harm than good speaking out from the diaspora, whether it might even be neo-colonialist to call out the breakdown of democracy and human rights in the Philippines when the same thing has been happening in the U.S. since its founding. But over the years, in meetings with Philippines-based activists, I'm reminded that speaking out and drawing the international community's attention to what's happening in the Philippines isn't just our privilege, but our responsibility. This was true in the martial law era, the Duterte era, and now the Bongbong Marcos era. I never imagined I would follow in my parents' footsteps, in my father's words, to live dangerously as a writer, artist, and human rights activist. But somewhere along the way, I realized that freedom of expression is a privilege. If we don't use it to uplift those less advantaged than us, we are complicit in a system that confers human dignity for just a few in society. As we witness the return of the Marcos and Duterte regimes to Malacanang, it's critical to remember the martial law years, particularly its lessons. To remember is to know how to live our fullest, our freest. It may be frustrating to find ourselves fighting the same battles 50 years later, but ultimately, It is an honor to continue our parents' and ancestors' work to instill hope and pave the way for a better future for generations to come. And now I'll close with a sequence of Dalit poems. It's a form of Filipino poetry that's composed of 4 lines of 8 syllables each that usually follow a rhyming pattern. This poem is titled In Memoriam. I began writing it in 2019 in response to the killings of around 30,000 civilians under then-President Rodrigo Duterte's so-called war on drugs and his war on terror in Muslim-majority Mindanao. At least 129 of those killed were young people between the ages of 1 and 17. In Memoriam. I have a duty to preserve the generation. Rodrigo Duterte, former president of the Philippines. Althea, 4, and her father. Erica, 17, and her boyfriend riding on a motorbike. Francis, 5, sleeping, cherub-like. Danica, 5, going to school. San Niño, 7, on a stool. Janelle, 15, Sunny, 16, and Angelito, all 3 seen at the wrong time and the wrong place. J. Ross, 13, for his face. Kristen J, 12, at morning mass. Kian, 17, after class, near a basketball court, unshod. Nameless others who run in fear, who fight police and disappear. Children shot by men playing God. In the name of law and order, Digong calls a war of terror. Children, collateral damage, a generation to salvage. But the dead will tell their stories. When we remember Kian loved flip-top rappers' dexterities, fashion shows Danica contrived, shirts J. Ross matched to mock Jordans. 2 chicks perched on his casket to prick at his killers' consciences. At a nation's forgetting to grieve, generation after lost generation. We are our dead, our dreams, our personhood denied. Tell me, are wars ever worth their cost? Thank you. I did choose to share this poem as, of course, I am thinking about the existential crisis that is happening in Gaza right now. And of course, I am not a historian, I am not a geopolitical expert, but I can speak from the perspective of a human being who's experienced transgenerational violence, trauma, precarity, from colonizations, from wars, from the authoritarian and militarized state, and from the labor and environmental exploitation by wealthy countries. And in my own advocacy for human rights in the Philippines, I always call upon Americans to hold their representatives accountable for our tax dollars, which goes in the form of unqualified military aid that actually abets the killings of civilians by authoritarian regimes. So if you believe that everyone has a right to human dignity and sustained peace, please call your congresspeople to remind them that they were elected to represent you, and that people must always come before politics. There's actually a bill in Congress right now. It's Resolution 786 for a ceasefire resolution. So please call your congresspeople.
That was incendiary and beautiful and necessary, and probably a good time to mention that the next reading we have here, the last Saturday of March, will feature Palestinian writers. I haven't made the announcement yet. The woman, the author that we were building it around, had to pull out at the last minute, and I'm still trying to set up the roster. But keep an eye on what we're posting on Facebook and on the website. That's going to be toward the end of March. And just this morning I was reading Patricia Evangelista's book. Some people need to die. Some people need to be murdered.
Country needs a killing.
Yeah. Some people need killing.
Some people need killing. About the Duterte era. Powerful. And your work reminded me very much of it, especially the litany of names. I mean, that's really all you need to do. So thank you so much. Okay. Next up, we have Chenda. She's a Cambodian-American poet and writer. Her work has been featured in numerous publications, exhibitions, and events. She's the co-editor of the anthology Braving the Body on Terrapin Books, which I know is out, and I hope you brought some.
No, it's not out yet.
Oh my God, oh, it's not out yet. I've seen pictures of people holding the book, no?
We have the proofs out there.
Okay, too bad. And Miho, I hope you brought books. And whatever, if you have anything out, we have the space to sell it. So this is a good group to do that with. Okay, well, too bad about that. I wanted a signed copy. I'll get one at some other point. Braving the Body on Terrapin Books. She has received fellowships and support from Aspen Words, Kundiman, Bethany Arts Community, and Queens Council on the Arts. She lives, writes, and raises her 3 children in New York City. She has a website, thechendabao.com. You can check her out there. I've heard the Chenda read, and we just thought, oh my God, we got to get her down here in Underland. She's fantastic. Come on up, Chenda.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for having me. Thank you Tim and Dito and Underland Gallery for gathering us all in this space. And thank you Vina and Miho for reading. I'm so excited to share words with you guys. I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't done like a in-person reading in a while, so this is very exciting. And hopefully maybe I'll know what time it is, so don't make your eyes glaze over. Okay, so I'll just start. This one is called American Inquisition. Where are you really from? My face, made in a country that murdered its memory, is difficult to place. I am not an American, or so I've been told. You speak English so well. This isn't about you. It's not personal, but it is personal. You've heard this story before. You think you know the ending. You are wrong. Let me guess. I am not your safe space. I did not rise out of an unfathomable death toll to spice up your dinner party. I come from a land of your atrocities, unacknowledged in the footnotes, a field of disposable bodies feeding your proxy wars. I am not an American dream. I never close my eyes. Let me guess. There is not a racist bone in your body. No harm intended. I mean, what proof of harm could I show? Who has spit in my face? Who has stopped me in my tracks? And if I were to fall into the fault lines of violence that make up this country, who will say my name? Another refugee poem. This poem has already been written, is being written again and again and again, no end. There you are, left bereft in water, watching flames eat home and hearth. You've already been pulled into that dread suck of time, elongating the slim barrel of a gun. picked your way through a landscape of corpses, fumbled through each level of grief, and named this poem your companion. But who is reading this poem? Not the ones with the guns, not the ones cheering them on or silently assenting to their menace, not even the ones who are carrying their children away from their fears toward your fears of what you know about this country. This poem does not traffic in saviors. I was this poem once, still am, always will be, and so I know this poem is also the broken starling egg I encountered on the sidewalk. So small, yet with a whole yellow yolk. My toddler and I stopped to wonder at it. We could not find a nest, but we did not know where to look. We had not known that starlings were considered an invasive species, and the lengths people go to eradicate them. Poisons, pellet guns, live wiring their perches, even planting in trees teddy bears full of explosives. All this fails to dislocate them. The starlings remain thriving, yet this small grief, for what else could it be, won't leave me. I find myself continually saying to my child, see what landed here and didn't survive. This poem, I was asked to respond to a poem by Kiva, who's a Ukrainian poet, about the war. It's called The Proper Work, and it has an epigraph. What if it wasn't the crash that made us, but the debris? That's from Oceanbaum. The daughter of war, born in war, out of war, prays to no one. She knows in times of war, time loses all meaning, and God retreats, leaving the work of carrying on to whatever remains. The implacable days dawning indiscriminately, and the nights that give way to more days, caked like grit on unwashed skin. The daughter of war, wary and weary, picks up the pieces of war, falling like rain. War collects in the ditches by the blasted roads, seeps into the groundwater under the rubble. War breaches the barriers, engulfs entire countries. There is nothing left to use, nothing else to do, except the most infernal task, public grief to a splintering audience whose attention might be the real-time measure of who matters. The daughter of war, tongue-tied with war, toughened by war, tired of war, tries to cough. Something sharp refuses to go down, maybe bomb dust or unchecked hunger, maybe the death toll exacting its price. Even the smallest memory of erstwhile peace is barred, caught tight in the throat, so that every time she speaks with pain. She speaks every day. So I was trying to think about what to read, and I've been told that my poems are really heavy. And I don't really know what to do with it because it's just what I write. But here's one maybe that isn't. Whenever anyone tells me I'm a good mother, I want to say, I'm not raising my sons to be men. Their futures are inscrutable. Is this a compliment? Specific to women and our need to be needed in a world of disposable bodies? If we're honest, we good mothers are flickering lenticulars, depending on your angle, monsters or care incarnate. My sons and I play a game. I tell them I love you more than all the leaves on all the trees and all the forests. And they respond, I love you more than all the leaves and all the trees and all the forests. +1. There we go. On and on to all the stars, riding every drop of rain, accounting each particle of dirt, every trace of matter. They claim every shifting cloud, every single hair. I respond with every dissipating wave of sound, every circulating breath. We race along the number line, forward and back, infinity becoming a ball we bounce across every boundary. We take the measure of every little thing in the universe we can think of. And then sometimes they turn and ask me, are you happy or are you mad? Okay. This one I wrote after the Atlanta spa shootings. And the title basically comes from what the sheriff said about the killer, that he was fed up and at the end of his rope, and this is just what he did. So this is called At the End of This Rope. Our Father, who could not be, their loving Father and Protector, starts in heaven, but ends on the breath of everyone who did not safeguard these women. If you cannot give us back this day, this wretched, this everlasting, this utterly predictable, this graceless day, hallowed be thy name. Take back now this daily bread of guns and hate. Give us back the murmuration of days, birdsong of days, lamentation of days, free fall of days, the whole dam of days he took from them. Or else forgive nothing, while we are forced to live with the open trespasses of coddled white men and the tiny confines of their impotent imaginations. What will bring us to the end of this willful oblivion of their manifold violence? Tempt us not into intimidation, but rather let us in to our own intimacy. Is this not thy kingdom? Come to the massage table, the altar of the body in need. Lead us to the human hands that need your all-knowing heart, though you know, as well as anyone, how grief is no deliverance. On earth as it is in heaven, we are yours, now and forever, are we not? This is a little bit lighter. It's called Human Decency. A tiny water bug scurries across the counter and my hand slams down immediately. No barrier between its death and my skin. I barely feel it. Running my hand under running water, I don't even use soap. I know that I'll do it again and again. Those small moving bodies evoking a nearly automatic response. I'll track down where they live, their secret passages, so that I can know exactly where to place the poison. My sons shout, bug, bug, because they know me. Merciless eradicator, matter-of-fact killer, stalker of infestation, grim keeper of a certain pristine life. They summon me to take care of these necessitated deaths. So confident are they in their own position of safety. Just a few more. Thank you so much. This one I wrote after the Kyle Rittenhouse stuff. A boy is just a boy until he is given a gun and a story about who has the right to live and who has the right to kill. This particular order of violence perpetuating itself like a hall of mirror his mother polishes. Boys are just boys, fattened for the news cycle. Someone circulates a recent picture of a baby-faced boy with an automatic rifle, and someone sweet is saying, somebody probably bullied that soft-bodied boy. Someone sweet is saying, careful how you judge some mother's child. Someone sweet would never mention his race, or how some mothers give their boys the guns, the ammunition, the resolve. Some mothers give them everything they know. Such sweetness cloaks the judges, the defense attorneys, and the fundraisers who work to convince us that other mothers' sons were never boys anyone should have ever loved to begin with. Boys are just boys, and I'm afraid I don't know enough about grief and its endless iterations to raise my boys in this country. They don't always get what they want, and their faces dim with disbelief and the rage of someone who thought the world was limitless, at least for them. They are so little, every single loss a catastrophe. I tell them, I love you no matter what, as I take away some small pleasure, as I clip their spreading wings for their own good. My boys, just boys, like all boys, whose preciousness won't be real until they're gone. Okay, this is one I just wrote today. I've been not really writing a lot because I have like an almost 2-year-old who doesn't sleep, and so I'm just trying to kind of go with it, and, still believe in myself even though I'm not really writing too much. So this is like, thank you for listening. Okay, poem in between mothering. I am trying to say one true thing, something that I know is not a betrayal. It shouldn't be this hard. Every time I open a book, I discover another wheel to turn. Don't worry about me. I know what I have to steal. I just have a coward's heart. Do I write about my children because I want to free them or myself? I want someone else to write this poem. I am trying not to be alone. I've forgotten where I started, where I left off. What was I supposed to be doing? I am not afraid for my children. I am afraid for my children. What did I just say? What did I mean? And I just have just 3 more. This spring. And I wrote this in the middle of the pandemic when the world was just sort of keeping away from each other, but we got to go outside for a minute. This spring. My son is the first to notice the robins have returned. They are hopping around the empty pictures mound and through the clover. He had recognized the orange flush of their breast feathers. Of this particular skill, he is particularly proud. It's how he owns things, identifying the clouds, cirrus and cumulus, marking each 11:11 of every day. He searches for the embedded moon in ordinary daylight. He finds rocks that he assures me are really crystals, rocks that are really gravel and unremarkable. All these he collects in his pockets, along with sidewalk pennies, broken sticks. I should be glad, even in this hard city, he hears the birds sing their own songs. The trees are starting to bud, and he too grows relentlessly in the direction of all we do not know. So this Ars Poetica. The poet's son is complaining once again about the food. The poet doesn't remember her early starvations, but she still finds tender spots. She unclenches her jaw and remembers to give him a tender hug. The poet knows that memories of harshness will still linger and poke through all the softness of childhood. His tenderness is only a trail of crumbs she leaves in the body. It's hard to make things beautiful. The wind-blown plastic bag across the littered lawn, detritus on the sidewalk, the world's indifference. The poet, like all of us, reaches out from her heavy heart, her hungry pulse. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Chenda. That was brilliant, moving, kind of a tour through the headlines. Kyle Rittenhouse, not somebody I ever wanted to think about again. Amazing. Thank you very much. Jen, did you get a seat back there? Yeah? I forgot to mention that we'll be doing a little bit of a Q&A when we finish. So we'll have the writers come on up after Miho reads and sit for 10-15 minutes and take some questions from the audience and maybe one or two from us. So please stick around for that, and then we'll schmooze in the back and drink lots of beverages. Okay. So last up for the evening, I'll just go with the pros here. Twice nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Miho Kinnas is a translator, writer, poet, and the author of 3 collections, Today, Fish Only, and Move Over Bird, both on Math Paper Press, and Waiting for Sunset to Bury Red Camellias by 3 Verse Press. Even the titles are beautiful. I love the...
And that's available, the book is available.
The book is available in the back for sale, okay. 3 Shrimp Boats on the Horizon appears in Best American Poetry 2023. Her collaboration with E. Ethelbert Miller, We Eclipse Into the Other Side on Pinion Publishing, appeared in 2023. I've had the great pleasure of discovering one of those poems that invokes the spirit of Frank Sinatra. Maybe break out the LPs. She holds an MFA from the City University of Hong Kong. She's an instructor at writers.com and lifelong learning of Hilton Head. She's come up today from this week from South Carolina, I believe. So we're so thrilled to have her in New York City with us. And Dito, did you want to add something?
Miho will be introducing her daughter Leslie for a little surprise. I think she comes towards the end.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim, for a very kind introduction. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Chenda, I was listening to you, and you said you are not American Dream, but listening to a poem, you're writing about your son, and you're reading it to us, sharing with us, you may be an American Dream. And also, what is American Dream? Used to be, I had white picket fence and a Coca-Cola, might have been American Dream. But, today, every one of us have a different dream in this country, I think. And Vina, I was feeling a little guilty, and thank you for the lesson in the modern Philippine history. In 1986, I can remember that very, very clearly what was happening. I was already a grown-up person back then. And we lived, my husband and I and my daughter lived in Hong Kong many years. So, Philippines were very close. And I knew what's going on. Then, I wasn't following what was going on recently. I felt a little guilty. But I'll try to, stay with it. And Luis Francia is my MFA teacher. Yes. And his wife, Midori, she and I are exactly the same age. We're from the same city. Yes. So there are a lot of coincidences. So I have to keep remember, the places that I really find very beautiful. So, so I was wondering what to read today, and I think I want to read some poems I have never read. My book came out rather recently, so I've been always reading Three Shrimp Boats on the Horizon because that was, picked in a very famous anthology, but I'm not going to read that today. If you buy the book, or if you buy Best American Poetry 2023, you can find it. And it's explained in the introduction of that book, so you'll know everything about that poem. So, I think I'm going to just go ahead and read it. Okay. Where the petals fall. Flower. Peanut blossoms pollinate themselves early in the morning and fall. Seeds will grow underground, underneath, where the flower perishes, knowing the daughter will never know her mother. Mother, half an orphan in bed, I never knew my mother's mother, who sang and laughed. Sitting at the desk, I read, being a flower late at night. No other way of being but be a flower. The flower pushes back without losing its shape. Daughter, mother no longer leaves the futon. Today, my son came home, monsters in his head. I cleaned the floorboard on my hands and knees. Thank you. This is something typical I do, the morphine poem. I start writing about peanut, the plant, and then think about how the mother, daughter, think about my mother, then think about another woman. I translated a book of poems by Ikuko Tanaka, and she passed away during COVID, unfortunately, not from COVID, but so her story came in, so it keeps morphing. So I really cannot, I don't think you can make sense of it, but this is a poem about mother, daughter, and daughter, it just keeps going. Right. And this is a poem about my mother. My mother passed away about two years ago now. So in this book, when I was writing this happened, and also, so there are many mother poems in here, but I read one of them. She likes the first glimpse. Every night when the man comes home, he and his wife dress up in the period festival's costumes. My mother was delusional, pointing at the drab apartment building out of her hospital window. They are so gorgeous in gold, orange, and yellow, only for a little while, then they turn the lights out. My mother was talking to me, but looking through me. She often did so in her last days. Anyone familiar with Kathy Parkhorn?
No.
I love her book.
She's great.
And so this is I was reading a historian's memoir. It's in a book called The Dance Revolution. It's a great title. So it's a kind of found poem. I put it together, and I was having fun with it. I'm in a poetry group, so that was like our prompt. Let's read this book and write something. So it's gonna be crazy. Yeah, of course, that's from her. Okay, excerpt. After Kathy Parkhorn. At the airport, where our layover continued, his mind was soaring like a birdcage. The illustrator of smaller things etched a spigot on an old sink and it immediately squirted a bird. The canary of spiral blue dropped a puzzle in the corner of a city. He sighed 3 times a day, fell asleep for 4 minutes at a time. Daydreams, a draft of smoke, took off beyond the rusted horizon. A shot. Thank you. Thanks. I'm going to read one more poem and bring my daughter in. So this poem is after a poet named Louise Labelle. And I was meeting another writer friend earlier in Brooklyn. I don't know what part of Brooklyn I was in. Just the Uber guy took me here. Anyway, she's also an artist. She has an art studio in the old factory building, and I was talking to her. And I was sharing this poem with her. And she said she actually translated Louise Labelle's poems from French to English. So it's just such a coincidence.
Yeah.
So this poem, yes, I was reading her poem. That was one inspiration. And also, I must have been watching some movie. If I can remember what movie was, I'll tell you. Something that was seamstress, sewing. But has nothing to do with that. But anyway, so this is the end of a line. A piece of string, 2 fingers tight around the invisible. The delicate luminous texture made from silk moth. Moth will not fly or eat. Kiss me, re-kiss me, and kiss me again. Did the beautiful rope maker write it? The fraying ends of the piece of thread begin the ideogram for apparition, phantom, ghost, shadow, or illusion. But the best translation for it is a trick. We have similar vocabulary. Okay, Leslie. So this is my daughter Leslie, and she started playing violin. She's not a professional violinist, but she's been playing most of her life. And I play a bit of the piano, so I've been always accompanying her all these years. But this time she's going to accompany me.
Let me just make sure.
Yes.
Camera.
I'm going to read the sequence. There are 8 sections in it. And these were, yesterday I was talking about haiku at the New York Public Library. And what do I do with haiku? See, the haiku is so small. Just read you one haiku. Or what would you say? You know, it's very, I always wonder, what do I do with my haiku? So I've done a lot of different things. So this is one experiment. So I have a haiku and a prose mixed together, and 8 parts to it. The title is, The Sea Fog Arrives to Hide the Lies of a Woman Poet. As I fear for my eyesight, you fear our memory. As you feel for my soul, I feel for your mind. I often visit a walled city in my dreams where the gate closes at sunset. Not a second later or before. With the chart, a wise mathematician's invention, even on a rainy day, the guards with the fierce dogs close the gate promptly at the prescribed time. I see you just beyond the arc of the gate. That field of goldenrods where you lost your earring. Two, if I dislike making love in darkness, you say, let us wait for the morning, or even better, the afternoon, as the yellow light that comes through the western window. An evening primrose standing in a rain shower. You fall asleep, your back is turning red. Sand dunes in the 3 o'clock sun. I go home to drink wine. I spend the rest of the year in solitude. I iron your shirt in the winter morning sun. A large white shirt of cotton, steam rises. First snow, driving crows run for cover. This morning I hear them again. Red-tailed hawks near the nest. Barred owls going home. Or is it a funeral? I wait for the iron to cool before putting it away. Bones in an urn. Someone saw me where it couldn't have been me. A doppelganger? He was sure. But I know I was with you on the other side of the town at that time on that day. Without knowing, plum blossom in the late sunset. But it is possible my soul lurks elsewhere. I am not me sometimes. I might have appeared at that intersection. The lips in the coldest winter afternoon. If you leave me, if I no longer have you in my life, I have thought about that already. I went swimming toward the drop-off. Secretly, because I'm not supposed to swim alone in the ocean. The sea fog arrives to hide the lies of the woman port. Do you see where the whales make a turn? Six, youth we left behind stays in my doorway. Summer bamboo and tree frogs. freshly rinsed grapes in a fine meshed colander. New growth in the dirt and the snow. One spring evening waiting with the clock. Youth we left behind stays in my doorway. Seven. What is your favorite food, Mother? An eggplant, grilled, fried, boiled, or pickled. The eyes of a big fat catfish. Popping sesame jumping out of my old frying pan. The blossom of blackberry gaping at my mouth. What is your favorite food, Okasan? 8. I'd like to love you for the pleasure of loving you, and nothing else. In the town by the lake, under the migrating birds crossing the Japan Sea, in the depth of winter, we arrive as twin fishing boats in the safe harbor at the kitchen window. Sparrows in the sleepy afternoon, waiting for sunset to bury red camellias. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you guys so much. That was so beautiful. I kept on thinking of images from black and white films, especially of the sea. Thinking of the Ingmar Bergman film Persona and the images of the water, and punctuated so well with the breaks and the music. Beautiful. Did you write the music?
Oh no. No, they're just excerpts from all sorts of compositions.
Uh-huh.
And Leslie, you should tell them that somebody approached you and asked whether the first music that you played is from a Chinese.
Yeah, it's called Yue. I played that one from memory. It was stuck from years ago in a chamber orchestra group I played in high school. And yeah, it's a beautiful melody.
Yeah.
It sounded to me very much like
Very
an
much
Arhu.
like a
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
intended for. It is
Ah.
our move.
It
Yeah.
is. It sounded very Chinese. Because we lived in Shanghai.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is.
Okay, what a wonderful evening. I want to bring a couple of chairs up here for our writers and have them sit for a little Q&A. And Maxim, do we have a second mic? I can find it. We don't absolutely need it, so don't worry.
Take this chair.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna position this. Please, Miho. And I'll just, oops, sorry. I just moved the camera like this.
You can drop this down.
Yeah. It's there you go.
Does that help?
Yeah. So, oh, Chenda. Chenda, yeah. I think it should, can you look at this, Tim? I think it should be lower.
Okay, we'll make it lower. Oh, yeah. How about right there? That looks good, no?
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Hey, Lizzie Pekka.
Yeah, Lizzie. Hi, Lizzie. And I saw Jennifer McKenzie too. Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
Well, we give this one to, maybe this one here. How's
Tim,
this?
it's-
Very good.
Tim, it's gonna be funny if you're not in the thing. You're just a disembodied voice.
Where should I
Voice
be?
of God.
Oh, baka you can stand there. Wait.
I need to be in this.
Oh,
Either
you're.
the disembodied voice or the
Why don't you sit down na rin? Like,
That's what I'll
put
do.
it. Yeah, but I have to see you in the
I'm taking
camera.
pictures. Okay, so here's the Q&A portion of the evening, and I'm still taking directions from my wife.
As you should.
This is the wrong
you,
crowd.
ladies.
Next meeting is really, in April we're gonna have, I'll figure it out. I like to get the audience involved as early as possible, so if anybody has a question, please jump in. Otherwise, Dino and I will lead it off. So anything from anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no reason.
Any questions? Yeah.
We need Dee Dee Champagne. Where is Dee Dee Champagne? Well, this was a beautiful evening, wonderful sensibility throughout. Obviously the themes began in history and historical trauma, and the ongoing trauma that we're all experiencing. What's my question? I love the way that Miho referenced the American dream as a kind of ever-evolving possibility. Maybe we can start there, the American dream and what it means to you as writers and people living here. Big world.
Start with the hardest question.
Today, I guess if I have the, I have to be the one that goes first. I think that part of what has drawn me to writing has been a bit of a project to trouble the American dream. I came to the U.S. As an infant, and so really grew up in a household that was really like striving, and so in so many ways, my family does represent like the traditional American dream. Like, you know, they came with nothing, and now, you know, last week my parents were in Peru, like just hiking Machu Picchu, like you do. And so, but as I've gotten older, and certainly as I've had my own children in the United States, I've had to really think about what that means as an artist and as somebody who pays attention to the world around you. I feel like in a lot of ways, in some ways, being a mother, there's this idea that you just sort of drop out of history, you drop out of society to mother your children, and it's really, and that, you know, who does that serve? What is that sort of, that place that mothers hold in our imagination? Like, what is that really doing? And I didn't really write until I became a mother, and so then I've just started writing a lot about what I see around me and how I think about my kids in context, in the context of all these wars and all these injustices and oppressions that continue to happen, and what am I supposed to do? I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. And so, you know, but one of the things really is that I really would like people to kind of see that the American dream is an illusion, but also that like these traumatic histories that we all come out of, the fact there's this sort of sense that it's like separate from America or separate from the American dream, but it really isn't. Like, it really, this trauma feeds the American dream, and so like, can we see that? And that's what I sort of try to do with my work.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know where to go with this question, but, you know, I, as someone who has I mean, I guess I call myself an activist, but I'm actually very uncomfortable with that term. I saw something recently about how, like, why is it that it's just activists who, like, have to care about the world? Shouldn't we, as human beings, you know, like, that shouldn't just be limited to activists, right? But I would say the American dream is revolution. And I just, you know, I see that when I'm out on the streets with, like, marching with multi-generational people, you know, at the Women's March, and, you know, as part of this artivist group called We Make America. And it's a lot of these women, some of them were, you know, actually the Guerrilla Girls, if we all remember who they were back in the day. They used to wear these gorilla masks and do activations. But yeah, they were out on the streets, and these were women who, you know, were protesting way back when in like the 60s and 70s, right? Alongside people who were 2 decades younger than me, or like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever the heck we're calling people these days. And I know, oh yeah, it's problematic, these generational terms, but yeah, we're still fighting, you know, like the world is falling apart. It's shit. It's burning, and yet we're still getting up and fighting, and we're still fighting for something, right? Like we call it progress. I mean, like, whatever. Progressives get a bad rap, but what I love about being progressive, it just means you are never satisfied. You think there is always something better than what exists today. So you're always pushing. And I know that, like, that grates a lot of people. It's just like, you're just complaining. But no, I actually think it's a hopeful thing, to never be satisfied with now, you know, to think that there could always be something better. And so whenever I especially see younger people, and you know, I don't have kids, but I have nephews and nieces, and just to see the way that they relate to the world, the way that they relate to each other, it's so very different than like our generations. And so that is truly the hope, you know, like when I think of what the dream is for everyone. I mean, it's learning from the young people, you know, who, you know, I always hear this a lot when people are saying, oh, like, young people never vote, you know, they're the problems, they could, like, tip the elections, it could be a sea change if young people just voted. But then I you know, it's like, what are they voting for? Who are they voting for? If they don't feel represented by the people who they see who are in power and are trying to create other systems of, like, surviving in this world. A lot of times that's, you know, building communities and finding power within a community, even if you are not represented by, you know, the powers that be, by your government. I mean, that's what happened during the pandemic. It was mutual aid, you know, like, yeah, I mean, there was some help from, you know, the government at some point, but, like, I feel like, you know, when I think about the Filipino community in Queens, you know, all those workers at the hospital, the way that, you know, these, like, Filipino restaurant workers kind of served all these hospital workers, and you have these kids who were not, like, in school and college, taking bikes and, like, delivering food. I mean, community. And so yeah, that is the dream to me, is to find authentic communities that allow all of us, no matter where we're from, what we look like, you know, to thrive. And you know, I was talking to someone the other day about this. You know, it's like, why is it that we do kind of live in our silos in this country, and, you know, like, are pitted against each other, black, white, if you remember, the Asians were in the middle and the brown people, you know, when we could have a different framework and be thinking larger. Like, why aren't we celebrating? I mean, you go to a lot, you know, if you travel the world, there are a lot of countries that are, you know, even more homogenous than the U.S., honestly. But it's like, why are we not celebrating the fact that we are not a homogenous mess, you know? That somehow we are all here making our own contributions to, you know, whatever this is, this, you know, this country is and whatever it can be. And so yeah, I guess that is the dream. And it has to extend beyond America or the American dream, because we are all so interconnected globally. And there are power dynamics there. I mean, I mentioned it in the context of labor and my family and our immigration history and the labor history. And so we can't just, you know, we want to be isolationists, but we're also interventionists. But like, you know, like we all live on this earth for now, unless, you know, you're a billionaire who can fly a rocket ship, and good riddance to you, you know, just like colonize the moon for all I care. But yeah, so, you know, we're all in it together. You sink or swim. We have a term for this in Filipino. It's called bayanihan, right? And kapwa. So you're all my kapwa, and we got to get through this through bayanihan. So.
So my natural state is, I think I'm in denial about many things. But then maybe denial and dream may be related, you know. And I don't dream either. Actually, to be precise, I do not recall my dreams most of the time, which is a disadvantage. Being a poet. I'm very jealous of people who have dream journals. I'm in denial in a way that I don't get to vote anywhere. I am not a U.S. citizen, so I do not get to vote here. And I am not a resident in Japan, so I do not get to vote there. I don't have to perform any jury duties. But my daughter has to go through a lot. Yes, it was a good experience for her, I think. So I always tend to say, you know, are you political? Are you Republican? Are you Democrat? I am Japanese, you know, so I'm in denial. But my friend told me recently, so Miho, you're thinking, you know, your daughter is here, your family is here. You most likely you have your old age here. So, but I've been in denial. I don't have to eat oatmeal. I get to eat Japanese congee, you know, in my old days. But I'm still maybe in denial. But I maybe have to think about it. So recently, I didn't know that many American people before. My husband is American, and his family, of course, you know, Americans. But I really didn't know very many Americans. And as a writer, also. I read my Elizabeth Bishop only 20 years ago. I mean, for my age, 20 years is not much. So, I mean, I discovered American poetry when I started writing creatively in English, which is about 25 years ago. Right? So my denial is that I am not writing American poems. I am not writing but I've been here for 10 years now. So I was thinking, even though I don't get to vote, maybe there are other things I could do. Probably, if I have an opinion about something, maybe I should show it some other way. So that may be my American dream.
Yeah. Is this? No. Yeah, it's also for everybody else in the audience. What would we do without you? Hi. So I actually because this is a reading and you read poems and an essay. I have a question about craft, especially since the Chenda or Chenda, right, as you're known. You said you wrote the poem today. and you actually read it today, and it was amazing. So I wonder about the process for each of you. Do you write a poem out, like just write it out and then edit, remove, and whatever, or do you labor over a line and then the next line? Could you kind of share your process of writing?
Thanks. I think I have a bit of a chaotic process. I sometimes will write like on the computer and just have a line and then erase it on the line. And there are definitely poems that have taken me a long time to write. And even like the American Inquisition poem that I read first was like a totally, it's gone over like many versions, and then finally I actually like sort of candlelized another poem, and then it cohered in a way that like just hadn't before. And I think because I don't have a lot of dedicated time to myself, that I really just have to be less precious about my work. And thank you for that compliment for that poem. I mean, it's just really I was sort of thinking about how I don't ever have time to write, and I just have so many things going on in my head all the time. And like for a brief moment this afternoon, like the kids went to the playground, so I was like, quick, before they come back, and it was just that was just what was in my head. I don't even really know what. I don't know. I guess I don't ever start out with a poem with what I don't ever know what the poems are gonna do. I don't ever know what they're gonna. I don't know what I'm writing about unless there's somebody who's asking me to write something specific about But if I'm just writing, I don't know. It's really like something really bothered me, like the news or something happened, and I just get really bothered, and then I just write it, and then I don't really know if it's a poem. I mean, who knows what poems are? Like, people just tell, I write them, and people are so kind to receive them, and like that's my process. So I really, would not recommend that process to people who have time and have space. I mean, that would be wonderful, but I just don't.
Yeah, all here for the messy process, and my partner is here, so he can attest to that. How many book piles are on the floor right now? So I think it might be a little bit. I mean, I don't know. You can probably tell I do love doing research, and even when I do interviews with folks, I will read their work, and so that's the laborious part. I think is just like getting all the stuff together before I even sit down and write. So that does take a long time. I mean, I'm working on an essay right now on Captain America of all things, and so I've just been like steeped in like comics and all of this stuff, but it has to do with colonialism. So, but it's interesting because poetry kind of came to me a little more recently. I find it so painful to write poetry, even though I love reading it, and I actually do love writing it. But it is like pulling teeth right now because it's like a new muscle for me. Whereas I know what to do if it's a reported piece or an interview or an essay. But I am trying to let the appreciation for poetry, I think, infuse things like the personal essay, because I love when you're reading your poetry, and I love poets who just like use all the senses, and I feel and also use a lot of like metaphors and indirect things, to get at a thing. Whereas I'm very direct, like you can tell. Even the poetry I write or attempt to write, it's also very grounded, very much in like the here and the tangible and the And so yeah, I am learning. But yes, the poem that I read today, I actually started that in 2019, or that's when the idea of the poem came about, because of all these drug war killings. But yes, I was rushing to kind of write an ending for it because it wasn't finished, so I also did that earlier today.
So if I know where the poems come from, I'll always go there. But I think, 100 years after, maybe more than 100 years, the imagism was, invented, established. I think definitely I am not in the idea, but in things. Is that correct? Who said that? Is that the E coming or William Carlos
William Carlos
William?
Williams.
Yes, who said that? Yes, I begin with the thing. Always there is an object, actual thing that I see. So depending on where I am, so I've been in the city now. So what? Just walking faster and all the red lights kind of break my stride, or just there's a traffic jam, which we don't really have traffic jam where I live right now, but we do, but I'm not in it. And fire engine stopping for no reason somewhere. It's just really really interesting. So it's always begin with things. But if you think about poetry is an association for me. And metaphor is the association. Metaphor, just you connecting two unrelated things and try to tell you something. So that's something comes something. If I know why I come up with association, that's a bigger secret to me. I mean, from me as well. But if I sit down and I said myself that I write something today, right now, and I always write something. It just it takes determination. So not much of a craft or anything. It's just sit down and then just tell myself to write it. And I have to believe that I can write about anything. Anything can become poem if I work at it. So yeah. That's it.
Anyone in the audience?
Sure. Oh boy, a microphone. Huh. Hello, thank you all for reading today. It's been a very enjoyable evening. I guess I have a question for Vina, but I might try to change it up, make it accessible to everybody. I've been thinking a lot about diaspora because I work in an immigrants' rights organization in the Palestinian advocacy area, and I was thinking about diaspora and people living in a diaspora, finding community here, but also being active in your country of origin. So many people in New York have roots and really close connections to their communities abroad. So I was going to ask you about activism and diaspora, but I wanted to turn it around and ask you, are you guys, when you're writing, how do you imagine your audience? And do you imagine an audience of speaking to people in diaspora like you, or immigrants, or mainstream Americans, or people back home? And do you write differently?
Yeah, well, this is interesting. So I left my last full-time job in 2017. I was working in fundraising, which is really sales, and God bless the people who do it. And if I ever wanted to go back into fundraising, I know I can go back because people always need fundraisers. But anyway, yeah, so why did I bring that up? In the question about diaspora. Where's my brain? But diaspora community. Oh yes. So basically when I left, I really felt like I was this empty shell. My work did that to me, capitalism did that to me. And so when I left and thought about what I needed to heal, it was writing. It was so interesting because every time I thought about my job is taking me away from the writing. Like I used to take writing classes when, you know, I didn't have like a highfalutin title as a fundraiser, but then stopped after a while. Like once I became assistant director of something, that was it. And every time I would think about like, you know, how my job was taking away from the writing, I would cry. And that's when I knew, like, okay, maybe this is what I need to heal. Maybe this is what I was meant to do, to write. But then, of course, it's like, I don't have an MFA. You know, I'm not an academic. Like, what are my credentials to even be able to, like, write? I mean, I can write, but publish? And so I said, well, no one can tell me that I'm not an expert in my culture. And you know what? How many times do I see stories about, like, my culture out there? Not quite a lot. So I'm going to start there. And, you know, I did start, like, actually the first byline, the first byline I got was a personal story, but it was related to, you know, like labor, I guess. And I wrote it, actually it's before the pandemic, so I was still writing about, you know, nurses, my paternal grandfather who worked the fields, and so yeah, it started there, and then one of the pieces that I was very grateful to write, like actually I was trying to get other people to write about it because again, it was like, who am I? I'm not an art historian. Who am I to write this feature piece about like the first retrospective of a Filipino-American artist in the United States, which only happened in 2021, and think about like the long tail of like the history, right? So it's wild, and so I had actually approached someone who I knew someone at the Times. Times did this like measly little paragraph on the exhibition in Newark, and it published like the day before it closed. And I was like, if someone's not gonna write about this, you know, damn it, like I'm gonna write about it. I know people on the West Coast know Carlos Villa. They're gonna be okay, but it's embarrassing that nothing's being written up about this groundbreaking exhibit on the Northeast Coast. If no one wants to write this, I'm going to write it. And I wrote it. And it's one of the pieces that I'm most proud of. But who do I write for? I mean, I guess first it is for the community, because that is my writing, like it's community journalism. But I do have this, because I was born in the Philippines, I left there when I was 13. It's like leading to lives. So, I have this sense of history that I feel responsible to, a sense of history that I know has made me who I am. But it's also interesting that I immigrated to the United States because if you've ever been to Baguio, I don't know if you indeed all, if you've ever been to Baguio, so Baguio in Manila, it's very interesting because the architect Daniel Burnham, who was the architect of the Flatiron here in New York, actually reconceived those cities in the turn of the, I keep getting this messed up, in the turn of the 19th century? 20th century? Yeah. So in like the 1900s, 1904 was when they started building Baguio. If you go to Baguio, the version of Central Park in Baguio is actually called Burnham Park. You go to that city, every road, Cannon Road, named after like the engineer who, the American engineer who built the highway from Manila to Baguio. General Park Road, like all of these like lieutenant and governor generals of the Philippines, because I guess it was the insular, whatever they called it. It was the same department here in the U.S. that deals with like, indigenous and native reservations. It's like the insular department or whatever it is. the Interior, the Department of the Interior. And so it is a very interesting thing because I feel like when I write, so for instance, I wrote this other piece, about Madison Square Park, and all of the monuments in it, and then the Flatiron Building right across from it, and just ended up writing a piece about like where I grew up in Baguio because of this American history. And so I feel like even when I'm writing about something here, it always goes back. So that is the diasporic relationship, I guess. It never leaves me. You can't take it out of me. It's intrinsic to me. But I am always self-conscious again, and I think I mentioned this in the essay about like what it means to write from the diaspora because of my privilege, because I am scared of being a neo-colonialist. So yeah.
Thank you.
My audience and community, I feel like when I go to a reading, whether I'm reading or not, and whenever a book comes out, whenever somebody writes a new poem and I share it with somebody, I think community is born. And it's really visible and it's tangible. So I write it for you. Actually, my first book dedication was to you. So whoever would pick up my book and read it, you're my audience.
Yeah.
But I'm not really doing a very good marketing or anything. But if somebody reads your poem and then says something about it, even just one word, there definitely is a community. And I think poetry is actually, it's short, it's easier to share, and so it's a really nice medium to meet people, exchange, and you can kind of hold it in your hand, and you can look at it in different ways. And it's easier to say your own thoughts because it's vague, it's association, and it's not, I'm not really telling you what it is, so you can say, tell me whatever comes to your mind. So it's really, it's a big world in your poem. So that's what I think about. And then diaspora also same thing. Where I live, I'm often only Asian person wherever I go in many places. So in a way, I forget that I'm Asian because I don't see any other Asian faces. And maybe look at the mirror or window and say, oh, there's an Asian person. Oh, that's me. but so I don't know. Maybe I'm too much of a minority where I live, so I tend to forget. But then I may not be thinking what other people are thinking really about me. I'm not sure. Everybody knows me. It's very easy to identify me. So then I don't remember somebody's. So I really don't know what to think. Just being the different person. It's maybe up to me how I behave, how I think, how I take it. So yeah, after all, audience is you. Whoever willing to listen to me or reading my poem, you're my audience.
I think I do love this question because I have really just started to really think about what it means to be in diaspora. I feel like I grew up just being a girl in my family. My family, had these things that they did, but that weren't things that my neighbors did. But I hadn't really connected it to a larger community. Really, I grew up in Northern Virginia, and every Cambodian person was more or less related to me. So I just thought it was just, it was really, it's been really amazing to write actually and discover other Cambodian writers because for so long I really thought, I didn't know what I thought, but I was just I just felt alone. I had all these thoughts or all these weird things, and artists and writers, that wasn't in my community, that wasn't something that my parents, fostered any kind of sensibility in me, and I don't blame them for that. They were just trying to survive. But as I've gotten older and realized there are just other Cambodian writers, and there have been for a long time, and certainly as a Cambodian writer, I feel a lot of responsibility for remembering, for holding on to, reaching back, and not creating like more space and more, not really rebuilding, because I don't really want to amplify this idea that like Cambodian culture was like wiped out, or that I'm always like writing from a deficit. That's just what I'm really trying to think about in my writing and in my community building and my artistic connections to people, because I think in a lot of ways, particularly I think as an American, like you can get sort of dominated by like mainstream, it's just a lot of amnesia, I think, in American culture. And I want my work to be reaching back and forward, I guess, and like letting us all see that like people have been here, people have been creating, and everybody is allowed to write and allowed to create the things that they create, and we don't have to have credentials, we don't have to, our lineage doesn't have to be like traced back in like a linear, like chronological way. Like, I can even, I can reach back to the ancient temples in Cambodia, and that's my legacy. And, not just, be like the face of like a survivor of genocide, like that, our work as artists in the diaspora is to, make our own space and claim our own ground, and sort of wrest the attention away from these like really kind of facile narratives of what it means to be in this world and to be creative. So.
Thank you guys so much. You've been extraordinarily generous with your responses and so wonderful with your reading. Thank you guys for being a great audience and coming out. As I say, we'll have another reading at the end of May, the last Saturday. That will be for Palestinian writers.
March.
Yeah, I think so.
Earlier, so in May, we're going to Kathmandu. And then we'll be back there in April as well. Stick around, have a drink, and say hello to the writers, and purchase books. I think Miho at least has something in the back. So take a look at that. Thank you so much. Good night.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add, for those of you that are interested in workshops, we have workshops that are running online with the JCC Manhattan, the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, and also with New York Public Library. You can approach me, give me your email, or I can give you mine, and I can give you more details. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching, guys. Especially from Australia. Wow. That was very good.
Around everywhere. This will be the only wallpaper ever. It's like no more wallpaper.
Wait a minute, I actually have to like
Won the competition.
finish.